how's it going? This is your boy Richboywayne, aka the Specialist of Opportunity. And this is going to be the first ever Richboywayne interviews where I'm bringing in guest speakers and I'm grilling them, asking them questions because we want to get to the bottom of what it takes to be successful in whatever, whether it be real estate, stocks, business, you name it. And I was thinking of a guest to bring on, a very special guest for my very first interview. And I thought to myself, who more special to bring on than myself? So this is going to be me interviewing me. It is going to kind of be awkward. And maybe it's going to be cringe, but you know, it is what it is. So we can just go ahead and dive into it now. And let's see how this goes. And, you know, we'll just roll with it. So, Wayne Woodson, Richboywayne. Give us a brief overview of who you are, your background, where you came from, and what do you do exactly. So, my name is Richboywayne, aka Wayne Woodson. I was born and raised in Nashville, Tennessee. I was born in the Settle Court housing projects of East Nashville, February 4th, 1984. And that was during the mid-'80s. And so if you know anything about history, then you know during the mid-'80s, there was this thing called the crack cocaine epidemic. And it was going on all across the nation, especially in Nashville. There were a lot of guys selling dope. A lot of guys in the hood selling dope. So, when I was born, my mother lived in the hood, and it started to get real bad. Like really, really bad. People were getting shot up and killed daily. And she decided that she did not want us to grow up in that sort of environment. So, when I was about 3 years old or so, my parents took me and they moved to the house that she grew up in Nolensville, Tennessee, which was a very small town, very different than what it is today. So, that's pretty much where I lived until I was 25 years old. I did not make very good grades in school. I hated school. Didn't want to go, would rather just stay home, and, you know, barely graduated high school. Like, barely graduated. Like, I'm pretty sure I was at the bottom of my class. So, there was definitely not high hopes for me growing up. However, I always had an eye for business. I don't know, I always knew that I was going to go into either business or real estate. Because I liked real estate. I don't know why I liked it. But I always knew that it was going to be something with business and something with real estate. So, I went to school. Went to a trade school after I graduated high school to learn about residential architectural CAD drafting. And I got my associates, or the equivalent of an associate's degree, in residential architectural CAD drafting, which essentially is a drafting diploma so that I could, mostly what I did, I designed blueprints and I designed floor plans. That was pretty much it. So that's what I went to school for. And, you know, tried to get a job doing that. There was about, I want to say this was about 2005. Yeah. This was around 2005. Nobody was really building anything at that time. And it was very difficult for me to find a firm to work for. So then I went into IT. And I've pretty much done IT ever since. Now, so that was about 2005. So let's fast forward a little bit in 2008. So, I think we all know what happened in 2008. No need to go into great detail, but in case you living under a rock and you didn't know, or maybe you were born in 2008, and you're just now watching this video, there's this thing called a recession that happened. And it was a very big recession. And a lot of people lost their jobs, including myself. So I lost my job. I go into work one Monday morning. Or actually, excuse me. Let me rewind a bit, because that happened. That was later on. Okay, I think at this particular job, I was putting on my boots, getting ready to go to work, and I received a phone call on my phone telling me to not come into work, that I'd essentially been fired. Which, come to find out, I wasn't really fired. I was laid off, but, whatever. I still got unemployment insurance, unemployment, so it is what it is. You can, call it whatever you want, okay? I essentially didn't have a job anymore, so I didn't really know what to do, because at the time I was living with my grandmother, and I didn't really have internet at the house that I was in, so I would have to go to the library every day to use the internet, because my house didn't have internet. And essentially what I would do is I would go there and I would check out some books while I was there. And one of the first books, let me rewind a little bit, okay? Up until this point, I had never read a book about real estate, never looked into any of that stuff, could care less about books and CDs and tapes and learning and any of that stuff. I hated reading. I hated books. I didn't even want to look at a book. You couldn't pay me to read a book before then. But there's something about it. And I think that sometimes God puts us in situations where we have to, he puts us in situations where we have to reflect on our life. And this is one of those times. And sometimes those situations are, losing your job maybe, or being locked up, or something of that nature. Something to where you have to reflect on how did you get here, and where do you go from here, essentially. So during this time, I didn't have a job, didn't have any money. Here I am at this library using the internet, and I decided to go ahead and check out some books. And the very first book that I ever read was a book called Millionaire. Now, this particular book wasn't all that great. Essentially, what it talked about was this guy who did the whole thing of saving up his money for 60 years, and blah, 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 and he had $1 million after 60 years, right? Which is great. If you want to do that, then that's cool. I think there's better ways and faster ways to do it, but different strokes for different folks, right? So essentially, that's what he did, and it worked for him, and that was great. The second book that I read was another book called, I'm trying to think of the name of it. Hold on a second. It was called Retire Rich, Retire Young by Rich Dad Poor Dad, or by Robert Kiyosaki. And then after reading that book, I then read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and that was the book that was the game changer for me, was reading that book. Like, I guess kind of Retire Rich, Retire Young was kind of the game changer a little bit. But I would say out of all the books that I read that have had the biggest influence on me, that book right there, Rich Dad Poor Dad, was the book. I remember sitting there reading that book, because I checked it out from the library, and I was reading it at like 9, 10 o'clock at night. And just tears were pouring down my eyes, because this was everything that I had heard ever in my life summed up into a book. And it just hit me. Like I don't know if you understand what it's like to read a book that just hits you, but you know it when you read it. You'll know it when you read it. Like, there are some books that just kind of touch on the surface of some things, and it's not really all that influential or anything like that. This book was different, okay? Because I had heard all this stuff all my whole life. You should save your money and invest in real estate and blah 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 and zoo. But this book summed it all up for me and put everything into perspective. And that's why I got into stocks. I actually got into stocks first before I got into real estate. So This is around the end of 2008, going into 2009. You know, didn't have a job. I applied at this weird company, and I forget the name of it, and it's not really all that important because, you know, I don't think they were a legitimate business anyway. Essentially what it was these group of guys would go and load up their trucks full of equipment, and they would sell it, essentially. Now, this equipment was, it was brand new. It was legitimate, I think. I don't know. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Like I said, I don't know if this was a legitimate company or not. But we're just going to say that it was, okay? And this was brand new equipment, and they would load it on this truck, and they would drive out to different construction sites and try to sell this equipment as a bundle. And the concept is actually ingenious. And these guys said they were making $100,000 a year doing this. Just selling equipment off the back of a truck. And that really struck a chord with me. Because before then, I had a job at this, I worked at a call center. I'm not going to say which one, but if you live in Nashville, you probably know which one I'm talking about. And I hated that job. I hated every day going to work. I was actually happy when I got laid off, to be honest with you. That's how bad I hated that job. And just to see these guys get up every single morning and go out and hustle the way they did, it struck a chord with me. Like it really inspired me. So, needless to say, I couldn't do that job because I didn't have a truck. I only had a car. And, you know, I couldn't exactly load the equipment into the back of my car. So that didn't work. So needless to say, couldn't do that job. However, there was another job working for Kirby vacuum cleaners. And if you know anything about Kirby vacuum cleaners, you know they ride around in a white pickup van. I was going to say pickup truck. A white van. And they drive around and they sell expensive vacuum cleaners. And that's what I did for 6 months. I went around with them knocking on doors. Knock, knock, knock. Hey, how's it going? You know, whatever the spiel was that we said. And we would go in and demo and vacuum this vacuum cleaner. And we could sell it, you know, I think it cost somewhere like $1,000 or so. Or we could get it on payments. And most of our vacuum cleaners we sold were on payments. The problem was that every last single one of the houses that I went into, I DNQ'd, which that just stands for did not qualify. Essentially, they had bad credit, or they didn't have a job, or something weird was going on with the credit, and they just couldn't qualify for the financing. Because if they couldn't finance it, then it's pretty much game over at that point, because nobody bought a vacuum cleaner. Well, I can't say nobody, but very few people bought one of those vacuum cleaners cash. Everything was financed. So that's essentially how we sold those things. And to make a long story short, I did that for a while, and then I got out. The whole time I was in Kirby, though, I was always reading books about real estate. I just kept going back to that library and kept checking out books. And kept checking out books. And kept checking out books about real estate. It was like I was obsessed with it. And so I decided to get out of Kirby and go into real estate. And that's what I did. And for the first, I would say 2 years or so, I didn't sell anything. I was out of work for a year. I got a job working at a factory that really was horrible. I really don't want to talk about. And it was horrible. It was in a warehouse. It was depressing. But it was a job at a time when I needed a job. And it allowed me to get the money that I needed. I know a lot of people are going around saying that you can do this business without cash, without credit. But to be honest with you, you can't. Okay? Or at least it's very difficult to do so. Very difficult. So I would say that you definitely need cash, and having a little bit of credit helps a little bit. Not a lot of cash. No, not a lot. Just a little bit. And a little bit goes a long way. So that's essentially what we had, or that's essentially what I had to work with. Okay, so this was about 2010 or so. Okay, now 2011 rolls around, and I am doing my thing, hanging bandit signs and all this stuff, doing postcards, not really getting any leads, not really doing anything, just kind of spinning my wheels in the mud up until, I would say, November of that year. I'm trying to think, was it 2012 or 2010? I want to say 2011, okay. 2011, December 2011. Okay. Excuse me, November 2011. I decided to, stop playing around, because I wasn't really taking it serious before then. I'm going to be honest. I was just kind of, just dipping my toes in the water. Wasn't really serious. And it showed. I mean, I was joking around and stuff, playing around. What really changed the game for me was going over my friend's office, who I had met on a deal. I talked about that in my wholesaling video, my first wholesale deal video, that I had met on a deal that I did. And I lost that deal to him. However, he became kind of sort of a mentor for me, and I learned from him. And going over his office and seeing him, seeing the way he ran his business essentially is what really taught me how to run my business. So what I did was I decided to go ahead and just really go into it, really just dive into it the way that I really hadn't done it before. And I decided that I was going to do 50 postcards a week. Now, I was going to spend $50 on postcards, which was $100 on postcards a week, because I got paid weekly. And I was going to do that until I got a deal. Well, a month later, I got a deal. Got a call from this guy. He had a vacant property in, I think it was North Nashville, or maybe it was East Nashville. I'm not too sure. And essentially, I went out there, looked at it, and you know what? It was a deal, And the guy was motivated to sell it because the property was vacant and it had just been sitting there. Had a big hole in the side of it. And essentially he wanted like $30,000 for it. But that didn't work for the amount of repairs that the property needed. I got a lot of feedback from the people that I sent out there. They were saying like, no, I can't do that at that price. You need to get it lower. Get it lower. Get it lower. It's like, okay, fine. I went back and forth with this guy for like four or five times, and I finally got it low enough to where it made sense. I talked him down from $30,000 to $10,000 for a house. Not $10,000 down, not $10,000 a month, $10,000 for a house, for the land, for everything. The whole thing, $10,000. And I sold it. I made $700 on that deal. Now, that's not a lot of money, okay? But it was enough to let me know this was serious. This was real. And then I went on and I did some other deals. Similar fashion, I think the one we did after that was a guy in, I'm trying to think what part of town this was. This was by the Cumberland, so I want to say it was in East Nashville. This is another East Nashville property, and it was in a similar condition. This one was vacant at the time, but it was a rental property. And this guy, he had rented it out to some tenants, and they pretty much trashed the property. And it was torn down. It wasn't torn down. It was run down. It was fixing to be torn down, actually, by the state. I mean, by the city. Excuse me. It was fixing to be torn down by the city, and we came in and we offered him, I want to say $30,000 for this property, and he took it, and that number worked. Because by this time, I made sure I did my numbers right, and made sure that I had gotten a lot better at estimating repairs. So I knew that $30,000 was a good price for this property, and we sold it, and I think I made $3,000 on that property. And then, so on and so forth. A couple of deals later, I run into this other guy. This time, this particular guy had 17 properties in East Nashville that he wanted to sell me. And he was offering it to me initially for $1.5 million. Now, I didn't have $1.5 million, but I'm a wholesaler. And I gotten kind of confident, so I thought I could pull it off. So I got it under contract, thinking that this was a good deal. And everybody that I shopped it around to said that it wasn't, and they weren't biting on it really. So I had to go back to the guy and see if I could get the price adjusted and say, hey, look, is there anything you can do on the price? I'm really interested in these properties. Is there anything we can do? So after kind of going back and forth with him 4 or 5 times, we kind of worked out an agreement, because the guy kind of liked me, because I'm kind of persistent like that. And I managed to get these 17 properties under contract on a subject to for $11,000. $11,000 down. That was it. Couldn't even do that. Everybody that I shopped this deal around to wasn't interested. Nobody was interested back then, because there were so many good deals that nobody wanted it. They were like, hey, we don't really need wholesalers because we have so many good deals. We're finding so many good deals. We don't really need a wholesaler. So I couldn't do anything with it. And I don't really know what happened with those properties. I imagine he probably sold them and made a lot of money off of it, which is great. I just wish I could have been involved in that transaction, but it taught me a lot. I learned a lot on that deal. So I was out there doing deals, and it kind of started to dry up around 2015. And it was around that time, I think I did my last deal, and I said, you know what, I'm going to get out of real estate for a while. And I went into other businesses, like buying websites and doing things like that are way more passive than flipping properties and trying to wholesale properties to people who are not really serious, and are just tire kickers and weekenders that just want to play real estate investor, I guess. And essentially what happened with that was I didn't do as good as I thought I was going to do. And a lot of the websites that I bought were not making money. So I had to give it up. And I went through a long period of depression. And, I went down that road. And the thing about money that I would say is that when you have a lot of money, no matter what your vices are, they'll find you. If your vices are drugs, it'll find you. If your vices are, maybe you like the adrenaline rush of buying stocks, day trading, hey, it'll find you. Maybe your thing is women. Whatever your vices are, it'll find you. And that's exactly what happened. It found me, because I don't smoke, I don't drink, I try to do things right. I try to live a semi-Christian lifestyle, but it's difficult, It's difficult. People don't understand how difficult it really is. And sometimes you get discouraged. And I felt discouraged. And I remember going through just periods of just depression, If I'm being blunt, like suicidal thoughts. Because here I am, I'm supposed to be this big-time, successful real estate investor, but I'm losing money every month, on websites and on things that, I should be successful. Like, why am I not successful? I'm living with my parents now because I don't have any money at that time I didn't have any money. And it's kind of like, wow, I went from being, a semi-successful real estate investor to this. It's a huge blow to your ego. But I think that sometimes in life, like I said before, sometimes life has to put you in a box. I guess is how I could describe it. You got to be put into a box, okay? Away from all of the worldly nuances, to where you can focus, to where you can meditate, to where you can build yourself up. I think one of the keys to being successful is that you have to be mentally mature. You have to reach a certain point of mental maturity. And I'm a firm believer that God puts us in situations when we're ready. When he says that we're ready to go into it, he puts us in those situations. And, if you're not ready, he's not going to put you in there. If you're not ready to be a millionaire, he's not going to give you $1 million. He may give you $1,000 to see what you're going to do with it, how you manage it, how you operate with it. And if you go and you spend it all on a bunch of nonsense, well, you're probably not going to be a millionaire. He's probably going to be like, yeah, I see what you're about. You're going to be stuck in the $100 range for a while now. All because you don't grow. If you think you can be successful at the expense of personal development, you are kidding yourself. And I know a lot of people like to sleep on that personal development stuff because they think it's a bunch of nonsense and a bunch of fluff. But it's not. It's not. You have to grow as a person. In order to be successful, you have to grow as a person. Otherwise, you ain't going to last. You're not going to last. And that's my firm belief. So, I've kind of taken a step back. I've started reading more personal development books. Like a book I'm reading right now is I forget the name of that book, actually. I gotta go and find it. It's by the author of Chicken Soup for the Soul. And I think it's called The Success Principles. There we go. The Success Principles. And of course, I've read, 7 Laws of Power and, 7 Laws of Leadership and all that fun stuff. How to Win Friends and Influence People. Everybody's read that book. That's a classic. Everybody should read that book. That book should be required reading for anybody. So, of course, the Bible is another good book too. I highly recommend that one, actually. That's the original self-help book right there. But, moving on. So, ever since I've started doing that, things have turned around. I was bankrupt when I started. My credit was in the toilet when I started. Now, my credit is almost at 700. Now, I got money in my pocket. I don't have a lot of money. I'm not a millionaire, but I'm a thousandaire. And opportunities are coming my way. And that's why I call myself the specialist of opportunity. I got that from Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I think it was chapter 9. He talked about that. Opportunities. And I feel like as Americans, we don't take advantage of our opportunities that we have in this country. We don't. We take it for granted. I believe that there's so much opportunity in this world right now. There should never be anybody that should be hungry. There should never be anybody that wants that or has a need or a want that goes unfulfilled. Because there are so many opportunities just right in front of us. But the problem is we don't realize it. We don't see it because we're blind. It's not because it's not there. It's there, but we're uneducated. We don't know about it. It's kind of like dropping somebody off into the woods and expecting them to survive. Well, if you don't know about the local wildlife and don't know which plants are edible and which, different things, that you can hunt and eat and don't know how to start a fire, you're not going to last very long. It's the same thing. We're not taught to seek out opportunities. We're taught to go out and fill out resumes and how to interview and how to shake hands and look people in the eye. That's all well and great. But if you're an entrepreneur, that's not going to get you anywhere. You got to learn to seek out opportunities. And a lot of people don't do that. So I wish there was more of an emphasis on opportunities. One day I plan to write a book on opportunities and how to find opportunities and take advantage of them. Maybe one day. But until then, I'm going to stick to doing real estate and making YouTube videos and inspiring people and encouraging people and just seeing how far I can go. And who knows, I've noticed that ever since I've started to take a look back and kind of focus on myself and, stay positive and, check out positive books and podcasts and things like that my life has improved greatly. Growing up, we didn't have YouTube. We didn't have Bigger Pockets. We didn't have podcasts. We had to read dusty books in a library. You guys don't have to do that. You can just watch a YouTube video. The only guys that were really making real estate videos back in those days was Tyrone Taylor and, Jesse Davis was another one, and REI Club. That was it. And nobody watches REI Club. So let's not even mention, there's no point in even mentioning them. Let's just be honest. Nobody watches that. So, but now you go and search for real estate wholesaling. You literally see tons of people making videos about it. It's not underground anymore. It's going into the mainstream, which is a problem because it's going to eventually wind up getting regulated, just like everything else that goes mainstream. There's an old saying that exorbitant profits lead to ruinous competition, and it applies for wholesaling. But I feel like that opportunities are always going to be there, even if wholesaling isn't. There's always going to be opportunities in real estate, always, no matter what. The government isn't going to stop that. So my advice to anybody listening to this is to go out, seek out opportunities, and take advantage of opportunities, and learn to become a specialist of opportunities. That's what I'm talking about in this. That's what I believe in my heart. Okay, so you gave us a little bit about your background. So tell us, what would you say the key to being a successful wholesaler is? What would you say the key is for that? Well, I'm going to have to say that the key to being a successful wholesaler is your negotiation skills. Negotiation is the key to being successful, in my opinion. Because without that, you really don't have anything. This is a people business, and a large percentage of what we do is dealing with people. So you got to know how to talk to people. You got to know how to negotiate. And really, you got to know how to listen. And I found that if you listen well enough and good enough, people will tell you how to sell them. So you don't really have to be an expert negotiator if you can just listen. I'll give you a prime example of this. Let's say, for example, you have a seller that's selling their house, and their house is worth, let's say, for example, $100,000, okay? And in your conversation, in conversing with them, they say, well, I have a mortgage on the property, and, I owe 120, 120,000 on it, okay? There are some people out there that'll still be like, hey, okay, so let me ask you a question. What is the lowest and best, is that the best you can do? What is the lowest you can do? Oh, can you do 60,000? Can you do 50,000? And sometimes you'll be like, bruh, they just told you they owe a balance of 120,000 on the property. Why are you trying to get it, low like that? He's not going to be able to do that type of deal. This needs to be a subject to or a lease option. And I say that because I've actually come across sellers who've told me that, They told me that the other wholesalers were offering them, trying to lowball them on the properties when they have a mortgage on it. I'm like, okay, why would you, I don't get that. I don't know. So yeah, your negotiation skills and your listening skills, I would say, are the two biggest things. Okay, let me ask you this. If you could do it all over again, if you had to start all over again as a brand new wholesaler, what would you do differently? the thing that I would do differently would be to get a mentor. I know that sounds kind of strange, but the problem is you don't know what you don't know. And for years, I struggled. From 2008 to 2011, I didn't do hardly any deals. Actually, I didn't do any deals, I don't think. I was getting a lot of appointments. I was going out looking at houses, but I didn't get any deals until I met up with my mentor. After I met up with him, I was doing deals. Now, I will say this, that I am not really a big fan of seminars and coaching and all that stuff, because too many people that I know personally have been taken advantage of through that stuff. At the same time, though, I know a lot of people who've had mentors and had coaches, and they were able to become successful. So it's a mixed bag, really. But I'm going to say for me, in my experience, I'm going to say having a mentor is huge. Doesn't have to be a guru, okay? You can find someone in your local market who's doing deals and walk up to them and, make yourself a service to them. You don't necessarily have to be their servant or their slave or anything like that, okay? But you want to be a service. You want to always come to the table with something. Don't ever come to the table asking, what can you do for me? What can you do for me? I need you to do this. I need you to do that. I can't stand people like that. People that always want you to do something for them. Like, bro, I just met you. What can you do for me? And I think if you approach it like that, you'll find that a lot of people are really nice and they'll work with you. And a lot of times they will mentor you. Now they're not gonna sit down and tell you everything about wholesaling. That's not how it works in the real world, okay? Nobody's gonna sit you down and tell you everything there is to know. Some people may do it, but it's rare. The majority of people will give you bits and pieces. So at the same time you're getting your mentor, you need to be out doing the business. And when you come up against issues and problems, that's when you go to your mentors and your coaches and you say, hey, I'm having a problem with this. I'm having a problem with that. Can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? You can search online and look at specific videos on what it is you're having a problem with. Don't look up videos on how to wholesale, because you're going to fall into that rabbit hole and you're going to get sucked into some guru's course or something like that. But be out here doing it, and then when you run up against issues, you'll know what it is that you're looking for. And a lot of times you can find it, and go find you a local mentor that you can sit down with, that maybe he'll invite you to his business like my mentor did me, and you can see how his business is ran. And, instead of being a competition, hey, let's work together. Let's get some deals. We can do a joint partnership. That's what we did. We had a joint venture, signed a joint venture agreement and everything. And, I was more successful doing that than I was on my own. So maybe you need to do that. I'm just saying. But that's my advice. If I had to do it all over again, that's what I would do. I would find a local mentor, somebody that's already doing whatever it is I'm trying to do, in this case, wholesaling, and ask, how could I be of a service? How could I be of an assistance to you? If I had to work for free, for that person, doing errands and stuff, then do it. Because the education that you're going to get is invaluable. But that's my advice. You can take it with a grain of salt, but there it is. If I had to do it again, that's what I would do. And I think you can do it. If a guy like me can be semi-successful, then you can be successful. So, this is my Rich Boy Wayne interview. If you want to hear more interviews from me, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You know what it is. I try to bring good content on YouTube, original content that talking about things that nobody's really talking about. and, teaching people what I wish I had known, what I wish somebody would have set me down and taught me back when I was first getting started. But I didn't have that. So you guys are lucky. Take advantage of it. Apply this information. Go out, make money, and just dominate your market and whatever else that you're trying to do. Go out, be successful. I'll see you guys in the next video. As always, peace out.